Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Leashed On, a podcast where I'm leashed onto a certain topic for 15 minutes or more. Now, as always, I am here to give an amazing advice session where I give advice on topics that you guys have asked me to talk about. And just a quick reminder on these because it's almost been a year since I've posted one. But in these type of episodes, anything that you put, these are based off of prompts that I post on my Instagram at PRISCIVX, and I post these on my main story, and I ask you guys, like, what are some things going on in y'all's life that I can give some advice on that you can be featured into my next advice session video. This is the fourth one of my entire podcast, saying that my first one is in 2022. So I don't do these very often. I kind of keep these as my special episodes to kind of kickstart, the vibes, what's coming up. Because what has been coming up lately and what I have been freaking with lately is music. I have really been listening to all different genres of music. And honestly, if I could put you guys on somebody, I would love to put you guys on Jake Minch. He has a very acoustic vibe. And if I could compare to somebody, it would definitely be a Lizzie McAlpine, gut-wrenchingly, destroyingly, lyrically, beautifully vibe. I actually got put on by a friend, and it was good enough that I own a set of his playing cards. Was it at a gift as well? Yes, but still, I wouldn't rep your average music artist merch. I just don't do that, period. So to know that I've got his playing cards, honestly, for me is a pretty big deal, because I love cards. I love cards. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started into it, because these can tend to be a bit longer, and it is currently 7:13, and I'm making this before my first golf tournament. So if that can tell you how eager I am to do this, let that be it. But as I did, oh, okay, stutter. I posted it, I said, it's time, because just as Mariah Carey is defrosting, so am I. So let's get started off hot right here. We've got how to deal with grief. I think grief is the best way I've ever seen grief portrayed is, and this is very immature probably of me to say, but is in Big Mouth, when they compared grief to being like a sweater. It's just a sweater that you wear, and it's going to make you uncomfortable, and it's going to make you itchy, and you can even get so overstimulated with the sweater on, but that sweater stays on until you are hot enough and warm and okay without the sweater to survive. Because think about it, sweaters are there to block out air, to keep you warm so you don't die of hypothermia. So it's like grief is there because something happened, right? And that's the best way I can compare it to make it make sense, is that grief sweater is on because you endured something that took you out of your survival mode, right? So you have now this grief, these feelings that you're carrying with you. And grief, I think people tend to think grief can only be something that makes you really sad. But grief really is the best way. Really, grief is about a social response to a significant loss. And when I say loss, that's where it gets subjective. But I think people just think grief is when you're sad. But grief is you lost something. You are grieving the fact that you lived a life with something and now it's gone. So that could be the end of a relationship, a job loss, the death of a loved one. And grief is really it's a mix of emotions. A lot of people that go through grief go through sadness, confusion. You're obvious, the 5 stages of grief: sadness, confusion, anger, bargaining, and denial. But grief can even take physical, appearances as well. You can feel sad and you can feel confused, but you also can struggle in sleeping. You can lose your appetite. You can quite literally have stomach pains. All of that can also just repurge into your physical appearance. And the best way at being able to handle grief is making sure that you get your physical aspects in check. And when I say in check, I mean making sure that you are eating a little bit, even if you really have nothing in your gut, just a quick little fruit snack or maybe a little burger, or just making sure that you are drinking water, because at the end of the day, still being able to take care of yourself will ensure that sweater is not itching you as much. The sweater's still there, but you're not feeling the itchiness of the sweater. Being able to, still make sure that you got a grip on the things that you can control, as in your diet and what you're eating and what time you're sleeping, and things like your social battery life, and where you're going and who you're with, those are the things you can control. Make sure that you can organize, okay, I did lose something, but what else do I have control of, and what can I do now that I have this control? I think for losses of death, death of death of loved ones is the hardest one that's not something that you just pick up and find a new version of, right? With these jobs, you can find a new job. With relationships, you can find the right person. These are replaceable, but people who are no longer on earth are never going to be replaceable. You can never have the same bond that you had with somebody living or dead ever with another person. And even if they were a twin, you would still have two different bonds with one or the other. And I think to be able to just know that you could, okay, at least I could take care of myself, that you're already there. You're already there. Definitely also seeking social support. In my public speaking class, I had seen this TED Talk, and we had done a speech analysis on this TED Talk by Kelly McGonigal, and it was talking about how to make stress your friend. And one of the biggest aspects that she goes into in her speech, it's a pretty long speech, it's a 15-minute speech, but one of the most important points that she made that really stuck with me is that oxytocin strengthens your heart when you go out and make connections. Now, I know that sounds like complete bullshit. Like, it's dead ass sounds like I'm lying out of my ass. But she was a stress, not holistic doctor, but she was like a doctor that specialized in, like, stress and cortisol and, like, all that good jazz. But oxytocin does really affect your stress levels in another different neurological sense that I don't really know. But she had went on to saying that, oxytocin can promote these feelings of social bonding and trust, which that is exactly what helps you against these feelings of stress and anxiety. And those are the most highest feelings that you'll feel when you're going through grief. You're losing something, you're anxious, you're stressed, especially if this is the loss of a loved one. How are you going to function if this is like a very immediate family member? How are you going to function knowing that person isn't in your everyday life anymore? These are very valid things to be stressed about. And I don't even mean, I can even go beyond and say valid and say very natural and very human, and in a way that you can have that conversation with somebody else, but nobody is going to understand how you feel. And that's where you have to seek that social support and get that confidence on your own timing when you're ready to have that social building and go ahead and talk about it and let it out. And maybe even if it's best suited for you to connect with a group of people who also have went through the same thing. Because as understanding as other people can be in regards to your feelings, nobody can really know it as well as someone who's in the same boat as you, right? I could probably be on the dock, like, farewell, take care, you guys got this, but you're actually on the boat going further and further away from me. And I could still have good intention in wishing you well, but I am not on the boat with you actually leaving. I'm just watching you leave. So, and things like that, just being able to find that circle. And if anything, prosper in the bonds that are already there with you. If anything, use times like this to really be able to take it out on creative pursuits. I feel like people forget, like, hey, there's so much in this world that you can invest into that isn't like your average things on social media. Like, social media does cover a lot of, like, gym influencer stuff and, like, a lot of drinking and smoking and partying and functions and making relatable TikToks or posting for other people's validation and attention, or depending what side of TikTok you are on, different things can be justified. And it's like, to know that yes, those are their own paths and avenues and ways of modes of, like, I can't really think, sorry, it's really early in the morning, but those are their own modes of, like, people trying to find themselves. There are other completely different ways, such as writing and poetry. And I think, and I know I might sound very sophisticated when I say that, but it's really just also, like, you gotta also think, what did people do, like, a long time ago that kept them sane, that kept them in check? And a lot of the things that those people did were write, read, arts, anything tangible that you can do that can connect you with the present moment. And also knowing that stuff like this just takes time. Nothing will ever be able to replace the thing you have lost, but you learn how to live with it. And it might be the very last thing you want to hear. That's why people usually get to that, like, anger stage, because they're like, oh, well, that's not what I want to hear. And that's true. It may not be what you want to hear, but it's 100% what you need to hear. And honestly, I get as stubborn as a rock, and I'm not moving, and I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. While people are giving me that tough love, and I'm like, no, you need to hear that. You need to hear that, and you need to hear that. And at the end of the day, I'm always thanking them because they're right. I did need to hear that. I did need to hear that. And if I didn't hear that, I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't have the type of mind that could understand a perspective that can battle how I'm actually feeling, because that's what I need to hear. And things like that is where like time can take its course. You can use all that time to let your emotions out in its fullest, and with time the sweater comes off. You end up being able to be so warming and nurturing to yourself that you don't need that sweater anymore. That sweater will come just right off. You won't have to put any force with it. It'll just be one day and it'll just not be there, and you'll be able to tell the story of the thing you lost without any emotions attached to it, because you have grown so far into becoming a new person who would have never known what it's like to have lost that. Now, I think with deaths of a family member, it's a lot more easier to know that their spirit and their learnings and their interactions with you still live with you. And if this is something negative, you can always, again, use outlets to make those things a positive thing into your character. All while on the flip side, if this is a positive thing, if your parent was a very influential member in the community, you know that you are the byproduct of them. You are being able to use their strengths and their teachings and their love into the people and bonds that you have, and that you get to be I guess the only word I can think of is outlet, but be that like extended leg that remind people that they're still here. A part of them is still here with us today. And I think that's the best I could say for grief, because grief is, again, very complicated. Emotions are just very complex, and when I say complicated, I don't mean in a negative way, but it's just very personalized, and at the end of the day, if I know I've suffered through grief before. I've seen my parents suffer through grief before. I've seen my friends struggle with grief before. And one of the biggest things that I'm still just so shocked by is that they're still here today. A lot of people tend to not struggle very well with grief and have to do their own things and on their own pacing to get over it. But to know that they're still here is the biggest thing. That sweater may or may not still be on, but the fact that there's still a host that sweater can be on is the really strong part. Getting into my second point, or the second piece we've got, how to stop getting into relationships. Honestly, this one was a wake-up call for me too, because as I've said before in my podcast, I haven't been single in quite some time, since like 2019, and it's 2025. Well, to be fair, no, this year I did get in a relationship, but it was a very again, like I could say complicated, on and off, and I think I'm in a right mind where I can speak about it in, like, not third person, but like speak about it from an outside, or like a detached, like I can speak from it unbiasedly. I can speak about it objectively. Sorry, it's like 6:25 now, so I'm still waking up. But I'm not gonna say suffered, but I was in a very long on and off relationship, and to say whether they were right or they were wrong is not my place to come on here and say that, but just to say that there were points where I wasn't in a relationship, but then there were points where it's like we were back in contact, but we weren't together. And then there were times where we were together and in contact and official. And I think being in, and I guess people call them situationships now, honestly, because I wouldn't say it was a talking stage. That was not a talking stage. I do not do talking stages. I think those are the most pointless things ever. But anyways, with knowing that I was going through a situationship, that took up a point in my life where it was like, okay, I would say I was in a relationship. I did have a relationship with somebody. We were very vulnerable and very intimate with one another, that honestly, if I was on here and said it wasn't a relationship, I would be disrespecting that person, and that's not my goal. So knowing that I was in an on and off relationship, and prior to that I was in a very long relationship as well, that all I have known is relationships. And one of the best things to kind of get yourself to stop getting into them is go ahead and track your dating history. I think that's one of the best things that we can just do ourselves a solid. And like, if somebody were to ask us, oh, well, like, what's your dating history look like? You're not sitting there like, I mean, I dated a couple people, or like, I mean, I slept around a little bit. Like, you're actually able to say, well, no, I have been in like 2 long-term relationships, 2 short-term. I was intimate with one of them but not the other, or my most recent one was my most devastating one. Like, being able to really sit down and be like, okay, who, and that's the other thing, some people do count their like intermediate and middle school relationships, and some people don't, and that's just where it depends up to you. Like, if your most meaningful relationships were when you were in middle school, that by all means you have that right to claim it as like, oh, that was very important to me, and now when meeting new people I identify it with a part of myself. I mean, for me, I will always count my first relationship just because it was like my first biggest relationship, especially as somebody who is gay. I was out. I came out with this person and we were very serious. I mean, both families very accepting into it. So for me, that was very monumental for me. That set a lot of my standards up. And so when you're already, okay, so when you can track your dating history, that's like step one. Then when you get to the next part, it is being able to say, okay, well, what did I learn from these relationships? Like literally, like quite literally, just sit down. Like sit down, give yourself a break, get off your phone. Like if you're listening to this, literally just sit down and grab a piece of paper that you could keep, piece of paper that you could throw away. But like literally, like this won't take that much this won't take much time out of your day. But literally just sit down and write, okay, person one, what time frame were we? Do I count it yes or no? Put a little checkbox and then be like, what did I learn? Okay, well, you may say, well, this was a short-term thing, whatever. I didn't learn nothing. But like, did that person make you feel insecure? No. Okay, that's fine. Did that person give you gifts that you really appreciated that you may still have somewhere in your room today? Yes. Okay, so does that mean that you like gift giving? Perchance. All right, whatever. We've got a maybe there. All right, person two. You're looking, all right, this person was a pretty hefty long time. We were like 6 to 7 months. 6, 7. But we were there, and okay, that happened. Now, would I say I learned anything? Honestly, yes. This person helped me step into my goals and my confidence and realize that I want to make sure I have goals before I'm with somebody. Okay, great. We learned something. Do that with everybody that you've been with, and then that's when you could be like, okay, well, these people are still like kind of like grief, like these people are still somehow within me. Like I am a mosaic of my experiences with other people, and that's who I am. Period. Just remind yourself that. Because you interact with a little bit of everybody, and all of that builds you. Because to be fair, you and the person right next to you haven't had the same experiences. That's what makes y'all so different. Excuse me. But anyways, so when you're like, okay, I learned this, and I was with all these people for this amount of time. Now, sit down and tell yourself, like, okay, if you are single right now, I would hope you're not asking me this and are in a relationship, but if you are single right now, sit down and be like, okay, well, why am I single? What went wrong in my last relationship? Okay, well, they cheated. Okay, I cheated. We weren't fit for each other. We weren't ready. Whatever the reasons may be, okay? And be honest with yourself. Nobody's looking at this piece of paper but you. So when you're like, okay, whatever, you write it down why you are currently single right now. So you look at it and you're like, I am single. Am I happy that I'm single? Because some people hate being single. And if you cannot stand being single, that's where you need to divulge right there. That's when you need to explore, why is it I don't like being single? We were born into this earth single, and we can live, we can survive being single. I'm not gonna say we're gonna die single, because that's not true, but we are born into this world without a romantic attachment to anybody else. And no, don't sit here and say your parents, because your parents are not romantic. Those are very nurturing, very natural bonds that you will have with your parents growing up, or whatever caretaker you have, because they'll just, I was gonna say imprint, but that's with ducks. They're just there, that they're your parents, and they can make your attachment styles, honestly. And I have a whole episode where I talk about attachment styles. But you realize, okay, I'm single. And if you are enjoying being single, then that's when you're like, okay, well, that's your very reason why you don't need to get into a relationship, because you enjoy this time by yourself and you're learning about yourself. And being single will never come to hurt you, to bite you in the ass. Like, I think people make single being something that's so miserable. But then when I have a couple friends who have actually never been in romantic relationships, and to know how well they can like leave a room when they're feeling like they're draining themselves too much, or how well that they know themselves, is honestly really admiring. I've got a good friend of mine who I honestly used to give her a lot of shit for like rejecting a lot of guys and not wanting to go on a lot of dates. And I'd be like, dude, like, I mean, you're good looking, you're very funny, you have a lot to talk about, like, a guy could totally like get with you. Like, what holds you back? And I mean, to be fair, she did go on dates and she did have crushes and stuff like that, but you know, she had, at the end of the day, she had been like, well, it's just I enjoy my time with myself so much that it's like a man would just ruin that, or just come in the way of that. And it's so beautiful to know that. I mean, she spent her whole life getting to that point, being able to say that confidently. But some people reach that point after a year of being single, or 2 or 3 years being single. And honestly, if you could set a little goal of yourself, okay, let me try to be single for a year, see what's the worst that's going to happen. Even if you feel these feelings of loneliness, to know that, you know, there are people living on this earth is that it should be that reassuring factor of like, okay, well, I'm not exactly alone. And if you really do feel moments of like genuine, like you want, like, because there's a difference between feeling alone and feeling lonely. or feeling solitude and feeling lonely. Because when you feel lonely, like, you're being left out of a group, right? Like, this is more of a negative feeling. While solitude's like, okay, I'm doing this for myself, I'm doing this for my healing, I'm doing this for my growing. Nothing bad can come out of a moment of solitude, because if anything, you're just growing from it. You're with yourself, you're chilling, you're vibing. But once you can be able to interpret all of this, right, you can then be like, okay, well, I really don't need a relationship, because, again, we did not come into this earth attached with somebody else at the hip. You can and you will survive without somebody by your side, especially a romantic partner. I think people just need to be able to remind themselves that. I mean, hell, I have to remind myself that all the time. Like, hey, my happiness does not need to depend on others. Like, I'm okay by myself. I'm okay being here and tuning in with my feelings, and I'm okay not worrying about somebody else constantly. Like, it's okay, I'm okay. All right. How social media affects insecure people in relationships. Example: boyfriend can't have girls as friends. Wow, this one's a really good one, in the sense that I have always, like, I think a lot of my beliefs from, like, relationships have stemmed from social media and online things. Like, I'll be saying things, and then it'll be like, oh, well, if your boyfriend does this or your boyfriend does that, it's this. And then they provide whys. Like, it's not like I see this and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, I see the whys and I'm like, yo, low-key, that makes sense. And if anything, I think in my first relationships, it was a lot worse when it came to, like, opposite gender relationships, if that makes sense. I think I mentioned it before. Like, I have always felt insecure towards a man. I will never feel that insecure over a woman, because I know what I have to offer when it comes to being a woman. But, like, a man has so much more that, like, I know I've said that before. But to redirect my thought and confidence on that, I've definitely had a new point of view where I can sit here and say, I still know what I offer at the end of the day, regardless of what the other gender may or may not provide. And I think, obviously, when someone's insecure, it's a lack of confidence. But you have to come to that closure yourself. You know, like I said in a previous podcast episode, I had admitted something like that, and I had to work on it and honestly do a little bit of exposure therapy and go through a relationship with someone where that was constantly exposed in my face, where it was like, okay, well, that person's gonna stand up for their friendship with that person, and they're going to be more quicker to drop me than drop the person that they click along with so well, right? And honestly, they have every right to. But at the end of the day, I had to learn that, not just because I wanted to keep them and because this relationship meant so much to me, but it was more of the matter of fact of, I'm going to be insufferable if I cannot tolerate, you know, a bond like that, especially if there's no suspicion that I should be worried about it. Now, to be fair, I did have suspicions to be worried about it in that situation, but I wouldn't want to carry that same logic in all types of, in any of my future relationships, because it makes people really insecure. Like, especially with the content being posted and spread around, like, there's tons of videos saying, like I said, you know, if your partner does this and they're cheating or stuff like that. But it does make people think too deeply, you know, and I'm all about being deep, and I'm all about, you know, everything has meaning, but at the same time, really looking too deep in things that don't need to be looked into can stress you out. Like, yes, love should be looked in deeply, and things like, you know, interpersonal relationships should be looked deeply into, and things like arts and literature should be looked deeply into. But things saying, like, if your significant other has friends with the opposite gender, that should not be looked into that deeply, because if it does, you know, you could create a problem out of it that doesn't need to be there, especially when this is content of other people's experiences. It can't be taken to heart. You can't take it personal. This is somebody else's experience. It shouldn't cause insecurity, because honestly, I know I've been through this, and it's rough, because that has been a cause of a lot of my like on and off relationships with people. It's just like, wow, like I am going through insecurity, and I cannot stand to be in a relationship with somebody knowing that, like, somebody else is on a pedestal. Like, that's the best way I've seen TikToks to compare it to, or like somebody else is prioritized. But at the same time, I also do 100% preach that you should have different connections for different meanings. Like, if I need a friend for homework, you know, I should be able to know somebody well, and like, one person can't be your everything. That's why it's good to have different friends in different departments and different aspects of your life. Like, separate your work friends from your personal friends, from your school friends, from your sport friends. Like, I think it's completely normal and healthy to keep all of those worlds separated in which you partake in, because the intermixing of most of them, it can tend to get very overwhelming. And, you know, I think it's just, that content shouldn't be taken too seriously, because nobody knows your relationship like you and the other person, right? If you guys have went through y'all's triumphs, and let's say, or y'all's hardships, and let's say maybe there has been some disloyalty involved, or there has been some betrayal or some mistrust or some loss of love, nobody can tell you guys what's right or wrong in y'all's relationship, because that's something between you and them. If you guys made it work, if you guys came to certain agreements, if you guys decided, okay, well, I love you so much, we're gonna make this work, and it's working so well, nobody can butt in and put their 2 cents. And sometimes, if you're not so sure of that relationship, you will be the one to go out and try to find another person's 2 cents, because you can't think of something for yourself, and that's not fair to the other person. It is not fair if you have to be going on TikTok and trying to see like, oh, well, is this micro cheating? Does this person still love me? Because at that point, then that relationship isn't yours. It's just it's online. Social media now has to dictate what your relationship has to say about you. And I think when people can remember, wow, like, relationship is the feelings I have with somebody else, like, this is between me and them. Nobody else can guide it in a different way. Nobody else can say what it is and what it isn't, because it's what you and that person have. And sometimes what you and this person have may come to an end. What you and this person may have may be there to teach you a lesson. Whatever it may be, you don't really need to look at it with the end in mind, but rather just experience it and sit through it. And if you do have a situation or an example where you do feel like, oh wow, maybe I am not being that prioritized as they say I am, or maybe like this other person may have something, going on in between them. They're having a certain feeling that I'm starting to notice. It is completely normal and healthy to bring that up, but to have a prejudice and judgment against it and harp on it so negatively has to definitely be worked on within. To be able to, like, a couple episodes ago say like, oh well, I'm always going to be insecure of a man, to now be able to be like, you know what, I don't give a crap about a man. Like, if they want to leave me for the opposite gender, that's fine. They have, they can do that and whatnot, but all that they're going to have is a loss of me. The only thing that's going to come out of that is that they're never going to have access to me again like they previously did before they made that decision. And for me to live my life knowing that I will at least choose myself if somebody else can't, that's fine, because my approval is all that matters. So when you can be able to remind yourself like, hey, at the end of the day, like, nobody else, like, oh my gosh, what's that quote? Hold on. Here we go. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. It's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. That is a very beautiful quote that can honestly sum up the whole idea of insecurity. No one can make you feel like shit unless you let them. So don't let them. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. But when you can really redirect any sort of anger, or when you like feel insecurity, or when you feel disappointment with yourself, into something that works for you, it is life changing. Because then at that point you could be like, all right, yeah, you could do me wrong, but at the end of the day, it's going to boost me up. Okay, yeah, you can try to cheat on me and do me wrong, and if my morals say I won't be with a cheater, don't be with one. Don't betray yourself just because he's cute. Don't betray yourself just because y'all were together for so long. Don't betray yourself for whatever reason, XYZ. Know that if you have your morals and your values, stick by them. Don't let anybody fuck with them. Because that's the thing. Like, I sit here and I preach, I will not be around people who drink and smoke heavily, because I know I just don't freak with that. I just don't. I don't. I'll do it, like, I can tolerate going to a party like once a year where all that's happening. I can tolerate, like, it hiccuping or whatever. But I do not surround myself around people who make that their everyday thing when they're under the influence more than being sober. So I don't freak with that. I would never be in a relationship with somebody who does that. I know I don't do it myself. So I don't play with that. I would never betray myself on something like that, because it means something very deeply to me. So people can have different perspectives or whatever, but you need to be so sure of yourself that somebody can come up and be like, well, you'll give me a chance even if I do something that breaks your morals, right? And you could say no. Anyways, all that to say that insecurity is something that needs to definitely be worked on within. And once you can realize, like, hey, this person's with me, we are intimate and have our own bond that somebody else won't be able to replicate, that should be able to kickstart a self-confidence journey that you can only endeavor within yourself. Another one is how to gain confidence to share who you are with people. I think this one's a really good one, as once again, I harp on authenticity. I think you should always be who you are. If you think that that's a nerd, if you know you like very niche interests, who gives a crap? Because in reality, believe it or not, for everything that there is in this world, there's a fanatic of it. There are Starbucks fanatics, there are NFL team fanatics, there are anime fanatics, there are different music genre fanatics. There is a community for everything that you can like. There's art, there's paintings, there's different mediums and paintings that have their own communities. There's probably a community for making art with your shit. Honestly, anything you could think of, there is a community for it. So to know that, okay, there are people out there who's going to accept me, and that like acceptance to be able to warm and radiate you should be a little first step. Okay, like, okay, yeah, I know that there's people out there who will accept me. Even if I don't know them now, I know that there's people out there. Also coming to terms with it with yourself, because I think when it comes to confidence, you have to know it within yourself. If you cannot fake confidence, that's another thing. Like, people think, oh, well, yeah, you can fake confidence, but if you don't feel so sure of it or believe it yourself, you're not faking, you're just putting on a show at this point. And it's going to be a show that's going to honestly make you look like a fool rather than the main attraction. So don't do that to yourself. Being able to actually feel like, okay, yeah, I feel good. I know what I have to offer, and I know I do this and I do these hobbies, and you don't have to do it in a cocky way. I think that was one of my biggest fears, honestly, throughout most of high school, was I had a big fear of being cocky at the things I know I'm good at. And in that, I had to, first of all, write down, okay, what am I good at? Or what are my hobbies, and where could I say that I am at? Because I honestly would rather be okay at a million things than be good at one thing. So I can sit saying, okay, I do all these hobbies, and I'm okay at them. But I'm okay at them where I know I could get better if I put time into it. Like, I give myself that headspace to grow. Like, okay, it's not like I'm okay at it, I'm always going to be okay. It's if I put more time into it, I know I could get better. And to go out and also try new things to, add to the mosaic of who you are, I think also it gives you to gain that confidence. But to be able to share to who you are with people, first start with the people who you know off the bat will accept you. Especially, this is a lot more easier if you, again, know different people in all different realms. If you've got your work friends, and let's say that this is something about your character that you want to get a raise in, maybe share that with your coworkers. Like, hey, do you guys think I'm like, not even like, oh guys, do you guys think I'm capable of getting a raise? But have that conversation, like, how do raises work around here? Have you gotten a raise? Would you go out of your way and ask to get a raise? Like, why are you scared of the big boss man? Like, should I be scared of the big boss man? You don't have to rely on others' approval for who you are. And I think that that's where you're going to get those confident bullets that's going to tear you apart, is if you believe that these people have to give you an okay on who you are. Like, who you are isn't just some bypass, what's it called? Those like highway tolls. Like, it's not just like where you stop and be like, hey, can I be myself? And if they're like, no, you got to turn around. And if they say yes, you go on through. No, you know that you're going to go through this highway toll because you have that sticker that pays for the membership saying that you can go through anyways. You're just stopping to make sure that you don't got no contraband, which is fine. You don't have any contraband. That's why you have that pass, and that's why you pay the membership to get yourself to go through without any checking. So when you are already so sure of yourself, you're just having this conversation of telling somebody who you are. It's not like, hey, if I tell you who I am, will you accept me? No, it's you're going to, like, this is who I am, and if you don't want to accept me, that's fine. That's fine. You can possibly set a boundary on it. You can possibly cut them off, and whatever happens on your own accord, that's okay. I definitely think that it's not good to surround yourself with people who look down against any aspect of your character, and I have struggled with that a little bit when it's come to my sexuality, because living in the South, not everybody's going to be very accepting of the fact that you are like in the same gender. And I'm not going to be here to contradict anybody else's beliefs, but that's just like, okay, well, if you think something negative of my character, I'm probably not going to spend that much time with you, because why am I going to spend time with somebody who's going to look down on me the whole time we're together? And then there are some people who I know that they have their beliefs, but they've never disrespected me, where it's like, you know what, we just won't talk about beliefs, and that's fine. I think it's completely normal to set those type of boundaries, and I think that if any boundary were to stop something that's so naturally of you, that's where a problem comes in. But if it's like more of like, okay, like you're obviously taboo topics like religion, politics, sports, whatever, like, okay, that's completely normal to not bring up in normal conversation. But to also know that you can coexist with people with different beliefs with you is also just such a beautiful thing. Like, a good thing that something that my manager tends to harp on a lot is how back in her day, which she just graduated in 2008, so she's really not that old, but had mentioned how back then, when she was in high school, people weren't that cliquey. I mean, cheerleaders sat with what people considered goth and emo at the time, and football players like sat and ate with the academic nerdy kids. And like she said, it was chill. Everybody clicked, like not clicked like we're in cliques, but everybody got along and just vibed and chilled. And honestly, nowadays I could admit that the world is a bit more cliquier and people like to segue into their groups. So be that peacock in knowing that, okay, I can be myself and I can click with different people of different views and different backgrounds and different cultures and different beliefs. But to first gain that confidence, you have to know who you are and be able to be unapologetically you. I've got 2 more here, and I'm going to have to call it wraps, but I just wanted to say, you guys, if you're listening and tuning in, thank you guys so much, and do not forget that next time you follow me on Instagram and see me post, do not hesitate to put down below what you are struggling with, what you would like me to talk about, because at the end of the day, I want to see everybody be up just in the ways that I had wished I had somebody to be there when I was coming up. In reality, you know, as I harp on being unapologetically you also have to know that you can win. You are capable of winning, and give yourself that reassurance and love. How to ask someone out without sounding like an idiot. Just do it. There's no way you can sound like an idiot unless you had a derpy voice when you did it. Okay, now that's me judging. But anyways, I definitely think that if you have feelings for somebody, if they're honest, that's not a lie. You're not lying. There's nothing wrong with being honest with somebody on how you feel about them. And the worst thing that can happen is that they can say no. I had a really good segment talking about rejection. And in reality, like when you think of basketball, you're not meant to hold the ball. The ball is meant to go in the hoop. So if you're clinging onto that ball and not letting the ball go into the hoop, first of all, there's a shot clock. So now you're going to do a turnover. And it's like, you're doing yourself more harm holding on to that ball instead of trying to just take a shot into the hoop. You may brick, you may airball, you may make it in. No matter what's happening, you had the courage to let that ball go out of your hands. So when you ask somebody out, you have these feelings, you're holding it, then there's a shot clock. Like, or maybe you don't know when's the next time you might see them again. Maybe you only have 1 class period with them, and next semester you don't have any. Maybe they're going to move soon. You know, there's so many times where this opportunity can leave from your hands. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to stay there and hold these feelings in, or are you going to let them out? I mean, you already know that you want to ask them out and that you would like to pursue a relationship with them, so go out of your way and ask. And it's a lot scary. It is going to be scary, but I think if you were to do it, even if you were shaking in your boots and all, and we're standing in front of them and we're stuttering and we're like, I really like you, you are still being honest. And in your entirety, you are still being honest. And I mean, they could probably friend zone you or whatever, but I mean, and it may be a little awkward, but again, when you think about it, yeah, YOLO. And honestly, that's one of the best universal laws you can apply to things like that is YOLO. You're only going to, or YODO, honestly. You only die once. You're only going to die once. And better to go out with a bang than regret never taking opportunities. All right, quick last one because I'm actually going to have to take a shower. But having to break up with someone knowing that you didn't want to but had to. I think to say had to is contradicting the sorry. No, that makes sense. Sorry. Having to break up with someone knowing that you didn't want to but had to. Had to definitely is strong because it's like, okay, there's a reason why this doesn't work. There's a reason why this doesn't work, and it sucks because I didn't want that reason to come into play. And honestly, I went through a very similar situation where me and someone the circumstances were really rigged against us, and it was tough because both of us had very strong feelings for one another and really wanted it to work. That it kept happening, and the opportunity kept arising, and we both took it, and it both happened, but the circumstances were just so strongly rigged. And I say rigged because it's just the way that it was wired, but for it to not work. And I think both of us can leave with learning that lesson, like, hey, you know, it wasn't really going to work from the start. We should have just done us both a solid and made it not work. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt to have learned that lesson that, hey, if something doesn't work, it's genuinely for a reason. And if you let enough time pass, you'll be able to look back and be like, you know what, that didn't work to open up doors for something better, for something that does work. And that doesn't say that you have to carry resentment. And I think that's what I didn't know about situations like that, is that resentment did not have to be there alongside of it. I'd spent so much time, you know, saying, oh, well, I don't want this to happen, but it has to happen, and carrying resentment, like, oh, man, well, you didn't fight for me, you didn't fight for it to happen, like, we could have rigged against the odds. And honestly, I do completely believe in the strength that you can change something, but if it's just you fighting for that, at that point, that's where that you don't deserve this and that this is not right for you comes in. Because I know that in that situation, I was willing to make things different, but knowing that that other person had so much doubts and didn't really want to go through with it, it left me hanging. And that's where I can sit there and say and look at it from my perspective and be like, you know what, this is something that doesn't align with me, because I know I would try hard for something I care about, and that person, I'm not saying that they don't care about me, but I know that they don't have that, they're not will-witted to try and go hard and fight for it. That's fine. That's fine that that's their character, but that's not my character, and that's where I should have stepped away. So sometimes knowing that, okay, it's better for it to not work out, and you may not want it to be like that, but it just not working out, than it be such a one-sided battle that you're constantly trying to make it work out. And you may not want it to, and they also may not want it to, so maybe that's where like, oh, well, Priscilla, it's double-sided. But it's still one-sided, knowing that, you're sitting here saying that you really did not want it, you really did not want it. And if you were passionate enough, you would have done anything to not make it go there. And honestly, even saying that it was you who ended things, having to break up with someone, knowing that you were the one who took that chance, that step, also stands and sits that what is right for you and what is best for you, especially if these circumstances are aligning. Hey, this won't work. Hey, this won't work. Hey, this won't work. And you're listening to it. That means somewhere deep down that you trust yourself, and that your guidance is exactly what you need into knowing that you won't put yourself in situations that don't work out for you. And honestly, maybe it's also just that it doesn't work out now. And honestly, I spend so much time into doing, like, trying to follow through so many of the what ifs in most of my situations that I know it won't work in another time, because the times that it could have worked, I've already took in those opportunities and it failed again. So I have sit in acceptance and knowing that any of my previous and past relationships, they won't ever re-arise again, because I've done everything in my power to make them work in the moment, and they didn't. And something that is meant for you will never leave. Something that is meant for you will never pass by you. If it's meant for you, it's exactly just that, meant for you. Anyways, I have to wrap it up really quickly because I have to get ready for school today. But if anything, don't forget to comment down below if you guys have any current conflicts that you would like to see in the next advice session here in my Spotify comments, or even YouTube comments, or even Apple Podcast comments. And as always, have a good one.